Jasodha Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Manachari Jayam Vishnupad Panamahamsa Paridrakacharya Satarashutri Srimad Savangrace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhu approaching a very rich man and begging for a little grain. Maharaj Nabhi is so desirous of having a son that he is worshipping you for a son, although you can offer him any exalted position, including elevation to the heavenly planets or liberation back to Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The priests were a little ashamed that King Nabhi was performing a great sacrifice just to ask the Lord's benediction for his son. The Lord could offer him promotion to the heavenly planets or to the Vaikuntha planets. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us how to approach the Supreme Lord and ask him for the ultimate benediction. He said, Nadhanam najanam nasundarim kavitam vajagadisha kamaye. He did not want to ask the Supreme Lord for anything material. Material opulence means riches, a nice family, a good wife, and many followers. But an intelligent devotee doesn't ask the Supreme Lord for anything material. His only prayer is Mama Janmani Jamani Shware Bhavatat Bhaktira Hetuki Twayi. He wants to be engaged perpetually in the loving service of the Lord. He does not want promotion to the heavenly planets or mukti, liberation from material bondage. If this were the case, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not have said Mama Janmani Jamani. It doesn't matter to a devotee whether or not he takes birth, life after life, as long as he remains a devotee. Actually, eternal liberty means returning home, back to Godhead. A devotee is never concerned about anything material. Although Nabi Maharaj wanted a son like Vishnu, wanting a son like God is also a form of sense gratification. A pure devotee wants only to engage in the Lord's loving service. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Agyantamirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpaturubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyarevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Supreme Lord is compared here, the word uses dhanadham, which Prabhupada translates as unto a person who can give immense wealth as charity. So the Supreme Lord is he who can give immense wealth as charity. And some examples of that wealth is also given. Swarga apavargayo, such as elevation to the heavenly planets. For materialistic people, that's really nice. And also liberation. That's nice for Gyanis. And then also he can give pure devotion to himself for the bhaktas. So he's dhanadham, a person who can give great wealth and charity. But living entities approach, he's like a desire tree, right? This is example is given. So desire tree is, impartial, right? According to the desire of the individual, the desire tree will reciprocate accordingly. So this is some of the danger, you can say, in the relationship with the Supreme Lord, right? Ye yatam mam prapadyante tam sataya bhajamyaham. Krishna says, as you approach me, I will surrender unto you, or I will reward you accordingly. And that reciprocation is of the same kind. That's described by the Acharya. So if you approach Krishna as a friend, he will reciprocate with you as a friend. And if you approach Krishna as an enemy, he'll reciprocate with you as an enemy and kill you. That is the Lord. So dealing with the Lord is a little dangerous. And if you're under the material concept of life and you approach the Lord who's like a desire tree, then he will reciprocate with you accordingly by fulfilling one's material desires. So the Brahmanas here are a little embarrassed that Maharaj Nabi has approached a person who can give such great opulence, and he's asking for something very insignificant. So this is on account of being ignorant. We're in Maya, in short. On account of being in Maya, we don't ask the Lord for our highest welfare. This may be an example of what we call this a self-envy, right? We don't desire our own welfare. Even this is the problem with conditioned life, right? We don't even care about our own welfare. Even living entities who are completely materialistic may know that they're doing something that's going to entangle them in great suffering, and still they do it. This is on account of being in Maya, great ignorance. So I was looking at a verse. Prithu is praise to the Supreme Lord. Twan Maya Yadha Jana Isha Kandito. Yadhanyar Ashasta Ritatmano Abhuda. He prays to the Supreme Lord that on account of being in Maya, Jana Isha Kandito means generally everyone's in Maya. Generally, looking around, everyone's in Maya. On account of being in Maya, they are always desirous of things that are separate from their real interest. Rita Atmano Abuddha, they have no intelligence. And Prabhupada's translation gives some examples, some of the desires: friendship, family, love, like that, society, friendship, and love. We're always desirous of something that is not actually for our self-interest on account of being in Maya. So even if the Supreme Lord shall come and offers us a great benediction also, we will not be desirous of it. Like we were hearing the other day, seeing the Lord in one sense is not really that great of a benediction, because it all depends on your existential position. We were hearing about this in the Vyasa Puja weekend. It depends on your existential position how much you'll actually benefit from the Supreme Lord. Right, so the example is there of Indra being cursed to be a hog, right? And Indra comes back to him and says, "Come, take up your post in heaven." And Indra was like, "No need, not at all necessary. I have my cute little piglets are there, and my pig wife is very nice also, and plenty of stool available. Where is the necessity to go back to heaven? I'm fine. Thank you very much for the offer, Hare Krishna, but I'm happy here." So Lord Brahma, and sometimes it's described like this: he killed the kids. And now you're ready to, well, wife is still there. What is that called? The shackles of sex life. What is that? My Tunya Agara, Prabhupada says, the shackles of sex. Wife is there, we'll have some more piglet kids. Life is good. So then he killed the wife also. And because he knew that Indra in that body would not be able to hear him with all the Maya he was in and the various attachments born of Maya. He would not be able to hear. Because in order to change the concept of what our welfare actually is, you need to hear, right? That's the only hope for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul in Maya, due to being covered by ignorance, he will approach the Supreme Lord sometimes, especially if he's pious. But unless he hears, his conception of himself will not transform, and therefore he'll always be asking the Supreme Lord for stupid things. So therefore, when we are being hearing this in the Bhagavad Gita discussions, that when the pious person approaches the Supreme Lord, he makes the arrangement for the association of his pure devotee with that pious person. Because in the association of the pure devotee, what is the pure devotee going to do? He's going to speak to him, right? And by speaking to him, the individual gets a change of conception, and then he can actually benefit from his association with the Supreme Lord, right? A real devotee, understanding his constitutional position, won't ask anything from the Supreme Lord, right? Those who don't, like this verse, Natevidu Swartagatim Hi Vishnu. They're not conscious of they have no cognition that the goal of life is Vishnu, right? Just like even devotees, right? We know the goal of life is Vishnu, right? And we're pursuing it full speed ahead, right? Generally it doesn't happen, right? We know, but we're not really aware of that, right? We don't move with that awareness. So as soon as we can get in front of some sense gratification, we really finish. How do I know that the goal of life is not... What is the indication that I'm not really understanding that the goal of life is Vishnu? My senses are being attracted from all sides, right? Darashraye bahir artamanina. Darashraye means he still has this false hope that there's something available in the material world. I can eke out some happiness in the material world. So his senses get attracted on all sides. Bahir Atmanina. When a person has a purpose in life, he can easily maintain his determination when there's purpose. But when there isn't purpose, he gets easily distracted. It's just like a person in school, right? If he knows the purpose of school, is to graduate, then when the parties come up and, the frat parties and this and that, he rejects it because he has a purpose. He's trying to graduate. But if he doesn't know that the purpose of life is to graduate, not the purpose of life, but the purpose of his being in school is to graduate from the school, then he gets attracted from so many things. This party, this club, that club. Okay, let me try to take this class, home economics. Let me take yoga. Now, anything where there's a lot of women there, right? He's like really attracted. But if he knows that there's actually a goal to life, then he just fixes himself on the goal of life. In this case, the goal of life is to graduate, for the student. And then he can maintain easy determination. And without the goal of life, his senses are unbridled. So the living entity doesn't know the goal of life is Vishnu, so he's attracted on all sides by the material world. Andanya tandaru buniyamanas. This means the blind leading the blind into a ditch. One understanding of this is like the blind soul being led by the blind mind into a ditch, right? The blind soul is not conscious of his relationship with Krishna. So he allows his blind mind to speculate endlessly and lead him towards hellish existence, adantago bear vishatam to mishram, in an attempt to eke out material happiness. So when one is in Maya, this is life, and then it continues birth after birth. But those who are pure devotees of the Lord, they don't desire anything from the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada's quoting Mahaprabhu, Nandanam Nanjanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadish Kamaye. He doesn't desire money, wealth, association of women, and even liberation. All such things he rejects. And he has a desire just birth after birth, let me be engaged in your service, because he knows that is his constitutional position. But the thing is, you can't artificially desire like this. You can try. Like you can go up to the altar and say, my dear Krishna, Nandanam Nanjanam Nasun. Hold on, let me back up. You can't, even if you try to mentally offer this prayer to the Supreme Lord, then he actually knows what is your true desire. Or you say you offer the prayer to the Supreme Lord, and right after you offer the prayer, you immediately engage in sense gratification. Right? Because ignorance is thick. You may know this is the prayer I should be offering, this is the feeling I should be having, but when you're in ignorance, you can't help yourself, right? One is under the stringent laws of the material nature. So in order to actually come to the point of desiring truly in this way, there needs to be self-purification. It's not enough to just, knowledge is not sufficient, there needs to be samskara also, purification, right? Both things are required to gain the adhikar to pray like this. Right, just like Trinadapi Sunichena, right? We may recite it, Trinadapi Sunichena, and sometimes we like really want to be, go deep, right? And then as soon as someone shall cross us, do something, a little something that's irritating to us. Suppose right before you chant japa, Trinadapi Sunichena, and then you're trying to chant japa, and you put yourself in a space where you can be in your space to chant japa, and right there, a devotee is walking right in front of you. Hey, Then immediately, Tadorodiva, so you should not put that in the garbage right now. And you immediately stand up and you protest. It's very hard because if one doesn't have the adhikar, he can't fake it, right? We may try to fake pure devotion. We might get like tips, we get acronyms sometimes that we can remember when we're in a difficult situation. But the reality is, unless you have adhikar, you won't be able to act on that platform substantially. Right? Harava Bhatasha Kuto Mahaguna Manorite Nasutodavatobihi. He's on the mental platform. So he may say, oh great, those were some great tips, Prabhu, and then I'll definitely apply those. But see, the thing is, because it's on the mental platform, how long can you even remember that point, right? Right after the class, you'll remember, yeah, I'll definitely apply it. So maybe right after the class, something happens to you and you remember it. But like a week later, that's way out of the mind. And the same thing happens to you again, and then you act according to your adhikar. Right? So it's not sufficient just to know But you have to actually get purification. One needs to be purified to come to the platform of having the adhikar to even pray in a way that's deeply sincere to the Supreme Lord. That doesn't mean that we have no sincerity, because no one would be here unless there was some sincerity. But then we have to offer prayers according to our adhikar. That would be most appreciated by the Supreme Lord, right? Anyway, just like I mentioned before, if you shall offer prayer to the Supreme Lord like a kid, that Krishna is as cool as Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack is like a cartoon, like the X-Men or something like that, you know. Krishna is as cool as Cyclops from the X-Men or something like that, you know. Then the Supreme Lord may appreciate, oh, very nice. But if he starts offering, you are beyond the modes of material nature, he doesn't even know what that means. He just knows he's supposed to offer that particular prayer. Then it's not genuine, and then he'll go back to Samurai Jack or Cyclops from the X-Men, and he'll be really into them. So one has to, I'm speaking from the point that Prabhupada said a real devotee offers this prayer to the Supreme Lord. It's not like he's desireless, but he has a desire only to serve Krishna, even birth after birth. That is what it means to be a real devotee. Not going to the Supreme Lord asking for so many material things. But in order to even desire like that, first of all, you need knowledge of what is a pure devotional situation. And in order to get that knowledge, you need to also be convinced of the futility of the material existence. Otherwise, when you hear from the Guru, you won't be able to place faith in his words so long as you have faith that the material world is something substantial there, right? Tasma gurum prapadyeta jignasushraya uttama. This word tasma means therefore, right? You don't start a sentence off with therefore. You don't say therefore. And you open the class, therefore. Then everyone gets confused. What are you talking about? So this statement, tasma, therefore, is referring to previous statements in the series. And the previous statements are discussing the futility of earthly and heavenly sense gratification. So, and then after understanding that, tasma gurum prapadyeta jinasushraya uttama, you understand that sufficiently, go and surrender to the lotus feet of the Guru. Why? Because then you can hear from him with faith. If you don't have, if you're still thinking there's something there in Maya, even when you hear from Guru, it won't be faithful. It'll be a pretense only. Everyone with folded palms and saying, oh, Guru Maharaj, very excellent discussion. But then after the class, going and pursue material sense gratification. So you need knowledge. What is that knowledge? First of all, that's Maya over there. And all those things that look really interesting and tantalizing to the senses in the form of political discussion or the discussion about different rights and all these things, that's all Maya over there going on to distract us from our goal of life. And then after we get some conviction in that, then you have to also hear about Krishna, the positive side. And what does it mean? What is devotion to Krishna and so on? Then you know what is the standard, right? But I'm not at the standard. So now that I know the standard, now I need some skar or purification to come to the standard, right? So before Nandanam Nanjanam Nasundarim, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, right, comes up, right? First, there needs to be purification of the heart from material designations. Then one can actually sincerely desire in this way. So if we want to become actual devotees of the Lord, here the Brahmanas are a little bit ashamed that King Nabi is asking for something very, insignificant, like a son, like the Supreme Lord, which Prabhupada said is also a form of sense gratification. And we may say, man, that Nabi boy, what an opportunity he missed. But the reality is, if the Supreme Lord were to come before us right now, what would we ask for? We don't even want to say. Because, right, it's only a pretense of devotion going on, more or less, semblance of devotion. If the Lord were to appear right, and he's there now, right, but, like moving and kicking and all these things, and he says, my dear Prabhu, what do you want? And then he said, can I talk to you in this room? I don't want the other devotees to hear. I don't want to be, embarrassed, right? So we can't judge King Nabi because we're on the same platform. The Supreme Lord would appear before us right now. In our state of contamination, we would only desire foolish things. So therefore, in order to really benefit from the association of the Lord, there needs to be purification through the process of hearing, chanting about Krishna and the association of devotees. And that way you actually can come to a platform of proper desire, kama, right, we were discussing. And by proper desire, then you can properly associate with the Supreme Lord, right? Everyone can associate with God. He's very merciful. He's all-pervading. Everyone can associate with him through their prayers and so on. But they don't benefit much from the association on account of material desire, which is like the The example given by Prahlad Maharaj is like an iron covered by dust, right? So when the iron is covered by dust, it doesn't get attracted to the magnet. Even when it's right next to the magnet, there is no attraction there, right? And only when the dust is removed, then the iron becomes instantly attracted to the iron. So we are right next to Krishna, right? We're chanting His holy name, we're associating with Krishna, but why we're not getting benefited from that? Because the heart is contaminated. So there needs to be purification of the heart through the process of hearing, chanting, and the association of devotees. And then we won't have to embarrass our superiors by desiring, like Maharaj Nabi, for something insignificant, when the Lord can give something much greater in the form of pure devotion to Himself. So that's going to be my presentation today. Are there any questions anyone wants to ask? Yeah.
I may have missed something, so sorry if I didn't understand it completely. You were talking about offering prayers from our stage. How then do we pray following in the footsteps of like the Acharyas or prayers from the Srimad Bhagavatam, etc.?
Yeah, so, well, the prayer has three aspects to it that's mentioned in Nectar Devotion. One is like humble submission, some prayers of humility, a description of one's wretched position, and so on. So following the footsteps, I'm sure there's plenty to talk about there in that area. Other areas of prayer, like Lalasa Mayi, and there's another one, anyway, another one. There, there's a tongue twister for me right now. These prayers actually have to deal with, the Lalasa Mayi deals with a person who's on the platform of Bhav, asking to be reinstated in his constitutional position relationship with Krishna. And the other one happens to deal with a person who's actually realized his relationship with Krishna, and he's praying to go back home, back to Godhead, and engage in that service eternally, which is a little bit far out for us. So then, in that way, we may take help from other aspects of prayers, from the Bhagavatam, for example, when one is praying for pure devotional sangha, one is praying for qualities, one is praying to be freed from ignorance, and that's you can offer those prayers honestly. Just like out of the series of prayers that are there's two applications. One is to recite prayers that are already in the Shastras. And another is you can recite your own prayers also from your position. But it's very potent to recite prayers or the songs that are offered by the devotees, Mahajans, the Acharyas. But then the Acharyas sometimes, like if you read Prarthana of Narottam Das Thakur, he's offering these really far out prayers describing his relationship with Krishna. Now, if you try to offer that to the Supreme Lord, the Lord will get a good kick out of it. You might be able to get His mercy because you made Him laugh, because it's like a joke. But there are so many other prayers Narottam Das Thakur offers, showing his wretched position, and therefore desiring the association of devotees, desiring to be, freed from ignorance and so on. So we can compile some of those types of prayers which are inspiring to us, and then we can offer those prayers to the Supreme Lord, from our position right now in total aversion to Him. And that way we might augment the spirit of service. Because when you feel from that position, the contrast is very nice. I'm really low and Krishna's really great. There's pretty much no hope for me. But Krishna is very merciful. And therefore, by seeing the contrast in the heart like that, you may take His service seriously. Right now, most of the time, the jivas, we think we're very exalted, right? Because we can quote a few shloks, we got our etiquettes together, and we feel kind of exalted, So the contrast isn't so much, so we don't feel the need to call out to the Supreme Lord so much. So then, by offering these types of prayers and meditating on them and getting momentum in I'm actually in a very difficult situation, then that may augment our desire to serve the Supreme Lord as well. And that will be like an honest prayer from our position. And then as we make advancement, we may be able to understand our necessity, and we have a deeper sentiment is evolved. And then we may offer different types of prayers accordingly, and so on. So, that's like my understanding of the thing.
Thank you very much. I was thinking we don't even realize, we're not even at the position of understanding that we're at the position that they're praying from. You know what I'm saying? Like those prayers that they're offering of being like in ignorance and all of that, we don't actually even understand like that's the position that we're in. So even that is like kind of high. But I guess we can understand there are certain prayers that are being offered like that. This is what I should understand, so let me offer this prayer to help develop that mood, as you were saying, like to see, because we're not even like recognizing that I'm actually needing to pray.
Yeah, Krishna says in Gita that it's an extraordinary soul who, Dukhalayama Shashvatam Napnuvanti Mahatmana. He says a great soul can realize that he's helpless in this material world. And it's not a very ordinary thing. Even to realize one is helpless is very extraordinary. Right? What is that verse? Ahankara vimudatma kartahanti manyate. We're so covered by false ego. It's very hard to even realize we're helpless. Anyway, that's the beginning. Anyone else wants to say anything? Ask anything? Yeah, you want to?
Hare Krishna. How do we cultivate like true sincerity? Because it's so easy to be falsely humble and things like that. How do we cultivate a true aspect of our devotional service?
Well, we always heard, at least from Srila Prabhupada Maharaj, he likes to mention Srila Prabhupada saying, the way he asked me how to be sincere, and Prabhupada said by being sincere. Maybe he didn't understand my question. Prabhupada, how do we be sincere? Prabhupada said by being sincere. In other words, Prabhupada is giving credit to the soul that we know what it means to be sincere, and we're making a choice not to be. Right? Just like, for example, some service comes up or something like that, and we're getting like totally furious about it, and we know that it's not maybe the proper mood, perhaps it's not right. And to be sincere, in that situation is like, okay, acknowledge that I'm conditioned, and therefore I'm not appreciative of this particular, direction right now. I'm going to follow it, but I'm not appreciative because I'm conditioned. But instead of doing that, we rather make a lot of justification why I'm right. Now, there's a reason, and the reason I don't want to do this is because this, and we feel totally justified. So, and it's a choice we make. In our heart, by a little bit of, stepping back out of the situation, maybe reflecting upon it after the situation's happened, that usually has to happen. Then you see that, that wasn't sincere. I was just justifying. I wasn't actually, or like that. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I'm giving like a simple example. So Prabhupada says, giving a lot of credit to the soul that we know what sincerity is. Otherwise, there can be no hope for spiritual life if the living entity didn't have like an intrinsic sincerity. There would be no hope because Krishna reciprocates according to the heart situation, right? So if we were absolutely insincere, you would not be able to associate with Krishna at all. And especially when nowadays when there are like so many cheating things available out there in the spiritual marketplace. But even though there's so many cheating things out there, if there's sincerity, then Krishna can guide you right to the right thing. Even if it's like 100 wrong things there, when there's sincerity, Krishna can guide you right to the right thing on account of your sincerity. And then you'll be able to understand that this is nice, this is correct, and this is not correct on account of sincerity, even if you don't have full knowledge. Understand? So then, of course, that's our initial point. And by getting transcendental knowledge, we can improve our sincerity, right? So we require knowledge and purification, as I was saying in the discussion. Then our sincerity becomes more like that. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you wanted to ask? Yeah.
To his question and what you said to add is, we want to be genuinely humble. And so if we are not, then I feel that being honestly arrogant is lower than being falsely humble. At least I'm trying to be humble. I may not feel that way, but it is a higher principle. So it's far better than being honest about, I'm not humble. Yeah.
Yes.
So mercy doesn't descend. So even if we make an attempt, even if it is false, just the attempt itself is very attractive. Then to say, honestly, I don't feel humble right now. That honesty, although it's a good quality, it's not effective.
Yeah, that's what we were mentioning, that you may honestly admit that you're not appreciative because of ignorance, but you accept the service anyway. You're kicking and screaming, but you honestly admit that due to my consciousness, I'm not able to appreciate the thing, but you're accepting the service. Of course, if you build momentum in a misgiving or resentment, then it may need to be addressed. Because if we accept a higher principle on account of that, only thing that's happening is more and more resentment coming in the heart, then that may have to be addressed. You might have to expose it, like, okay, Prabhu, I'm getting, really negative feelings about you right now. Yeah, tell it like it is. Yes, thank you for that. Okay, does anyone else want to ask anything? Yeah.
That you wanted to end at 8, that's why I didn't say anything before. I wanted to discuss this point more of, like the question I was asking and the way you answered, there are certain prayers that we can offer. Is that, I don't want to make it too technical of a thing, we can just be inspired and offer prayers, but is it, how important is it that we, quote unquote, like follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas with guidance as to what things are useful for us to pray for like that? I'm sure it's helpful, but how essential is that? Or can we just kind of, this is what I feel I need to develop, so I'm going to, work on that?
Okay, Prabhupada gave us like a song book, and if you see most of the songs in the song book, those are obviously nice to offer to the Supreme Lord. Under guidance, one may, expose his inner situation to a devotee, and the devotee may give him some recommendation and offer these prayers and those prayers and those prayers, following the footsteps of the predecessor acharyas. And the most important prayer in Kali Yuga is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So at least that prayer we can offer incessantly. Even if we don't know any other prayers, just chant Hare Krishna and try to improve our sincerity in that, free from offense. That is itself the best prayer that anyone can do in the age of Kali. Chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra without offense. And actually, these other prayers are simply meant to be auxiliary to our chanting of Hare Krishna, actually. They're meant to help us improve our approach to the holy name of Krishna. So with that understanding, we may read this prayer and that prayer and that prayer with the idea that we should be improving our approach to the holy name of Krishna. But the best thing to do is chant Hare Krishna without offense. And even if we don't know any other prayer, you're still good to go. Back home, back to Godhead. And if you need some other supports, then there's so many prayers are there. Help keep the consciousness fixed on the holy name and so on. That's nice. And with guidance, we can get some help how to do that more effectively. Jai. Okay then. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.